Okay. Introduce us to this video there, Jason.
Alrighty, this is our fun little video on goblins. Those fun little rapscallions. They are traditionally chaotic evil. However, in modern times, in Dungeons and Dragons 2024 and even 2014 to even Pathfinder 2nd Edition, they have moved their butts from that chaotic evil territory into chaotic neutral territory. But they're just crazy little pyromaniacs in themselves. They are Fey folk. They're a Fey heritage. So oftentimes they will have a lot of the similar parallel characteristics to elves. They're just a little more crazy, miniaturized variant of elves.
So they're kind of like kobolds,
Yeah, they're kobolds, yes.
but they're goblins.
Yes. Interestingly enough, kobold is the German word for goblin. Yeah,
Interesting. I didn't know that. Is that bullshit? Are you
I'm not bullshitting.
okay?
If you
That's just how.
if you look in even if you look in say like the older editions of Dungeons and Dragons in monster sections, goblin and kobold are basically interchangeable.
Interesting. Okay. Okay. So we're gonna be each making up a combat encounter on the species or
Mm-hmm.
monster of goblin. With that, I already have my whole encounter kind of made up here. We've taken to allow for you can change up what the goblins kind of are in terms of you can give them different weapons. Maybe you can make them more bulky or make them more flavorful and
Mm-hmm.
other dynamics. Really do whatever you want with it. It's just a goblin encounter, which doesn't encapsulate only the goblin stat block.
Yeah.
So
Start with the basics.
I already have my full encounter made.
Alrighty. The basic things about goblins is to remember that they are small, they are mischievous and tricksy. They are very big fans of ambushes. So whenever, as a game master or dungeon master, when you are utilizing goblins, your natural urge is to make simple traps and have a lot of options towards ambushes.
It's
Like,
worth noting,
yeah,
on top of the ambush, they like to work together.
yeah.
They keep their little villages. They'll do a bit of tunneling. They'll even elect their own officials, if you will, maybe by strength.
Mm-hmm.
Not, but probably not a democracy of the goblins, but maybe.
Yeah.
So it is tricksy and fun, but they do have their own little heritage and civilization to them,
Yeah.
right?
It's a little crazy, chaotic, like goblin mode energy to it. Yes. Uh, Oftentimes they are the monsters at very low level that usually most dungeon masters will use against the players. They're usually the first enemy force that a lot of people run up against. So I felt that it was really important to cover goblins. Keeping in mind that goblins are small, they're small sized,
So
and
about 2.5 feet
and
tall.
they have that nimble escape feature. You can easily use bushes or various other objects in the environment to have them duck in and out of, to attack with their weaponry. Uh, it's always found that it's really fun to play around with them. They are generally pretty good critters. They have that like special touch of rogue in them, being that they have that nimble escape feature,
Yep.
allowing them to get in and out without being able to be hit by enemies. That can frustrate the players, but still does not substantially increase their damage output capacity nor their HP.
It more makes for a more
Yeah.
interesting encounter without necessarily making it more dangerous.
Yeah, it's not the territory of like orcs, which is another early level enemy that people will oftentimes choose, where it's basically like step in and then wail on each other, or gnolls, which is basically kind of the same kind of vibe too. The goblins have that nice little touch where you have that ability to get out of fights.
Yeah.
And keep that in mind, dungeon masters, when you're playing with goblins. you could always have them escape through small passages or brush very quickly.
Their own little tunnel.
Yeah,
Tunnel
and
goblins.
yeah, it's not even just tunnels. It's through a bush or something like that. A little small area
Yeah.
to get out. So, and sometimes that is fun in itself.
Completely
Yeah.
agree. I think they're a great thing to run. I have a full encounter built up for
Sure.
explaining goblins. Would you like to start, or shall I?
Go for it.
Okay, so let me jump over to my goblin encounter. For my goblin encounter, I've got the Goblin King's Feast.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of wanted to build off of the chaos of what kind of goblins uphold in their daily lives, right? So basically, my idea is that the players are stumbling around and they hear a bit of a ruckus and maybe like a large barn or something like that, and it's like made of makeshift wooden logs or other things. It's clear to us right now that we're talking about goblins that it's a goblin hut of some kind, but in here we've got a big hall that's like full mid celebration for the Goblin King. It's full of food and ale, live entertainment, being like a captured NPC that maybe the players are looking for to save, and now they've found him, right? They burst in, and it immediately is going to strike forth a fight or a chance for a narrative way of solving it as well. But knowing goblins and people bursting through while they already have a captive, probably a fight. My idea is I've remastered some goblins. I've added the Goblin Brewmasters, which throw explosive ale kegs, doing bludgeoning and fire damage that would also kind of leave a slippery mess on the ground that can create difficult terrain or make saving throws to not slip and fall, right? To create the prone condition. Additionally, I've added gluttons into here, big old bulky ones that are like eating. They've got, let's say, maybe big old turkey legs, if you will, that they're like chewing on that they can be used as clubs. They're bloated. They've got double the hit points of a regular goblin. They've got this like acid attack where they vomit on the players, and this can be like this spread attack. So at this point, I've already now given the goblins two separate AoE attacks, but they also have a king. So the Goblin King, or this boss, is this kind of ogre-sized goblin that
That's a pretty big goblin.
I gave him a big old sack on his back that he can just go and pull out of it, which just has rats in it. He has
Okay.
a big old rat sack, and he can go and maybe it doesn't contain rats, or maybe it summons rats, right?
Mm-hmm.
It narratively, it sounds really funny to just have him have a bag of rats though, just on his back at like a general amount of time that he can throw out at any given time. That just sounds funny, so I like that more. But the idea with him is that he would also have this giant cleaver as well that he would be broadly swinging into the people as they approach him, fighting him off. He's got his the gluttons and the brewmasters all attacking from the sides, and all throughout the fight, the goblins are going in. Let's say they've got some up in the scaffolding that are going and shooting bows and arrows down, throwing their kegs down. Some are tipping over tables to use as half cover, which never gets used. Popping up, shooting, popping down, and this whole kind of onslaught or siege by the players into here to then free their NPC. Uh, Building off of that, I have a little bit more actually. So I was thinking on kind of the scaling of the difficulty of here, which the idea was kind of that, well, this is very challenging. There's many ways you could change it. I've already upped the difficulty in a lot of ways. You could really dial it back. Let's say with the gluttons, you could just not give the additional health. With the brewmasters, their splash of ale and fire and whatnot, you could just remove the fire damage or lower the save and just make it just fall prone. Right? It doesn't need to be a bunch of fire damage like an alchemist fire. And then the Goblin King, perhaps we take away his bag of rats. Maybe he doesn't need the rats. Maybe just his cleaver is good. Uh, that's I'm gonna say most of what I had, but I had some additional ideas of thematic twists. I'm sorry, I made a lot of notes. All right,
Yeah, you really went extra on this one.
that's okay. Um, so skipping over some, maybe like a rival goblin clan could come in at the ruckus as well, following the adventures in, and this creates like this multi clash of goblins that now the players are like in the middle of, and they just want to get out with their NPC, right?
Yep.
They just want to save Dave the Bard, but now they've got Goblin King A and Goblin King B kind of at each other's throats right here. Or maybe with the fire splashing around, that the now the roof is starting to collapse and it's creating deck saves and dodging the pillars that are falling, or it's cutting off parts of the room, support beams falling, all that, right? I'll say that's most of what I have. Besides that, the players could try and do things like rescuing the NPC. They could try and steal the crown from the Goblin King. Other things like that. There's a lot of ways you could build this encounter, but that was roughly what I had for the encounter.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
How, what are your thoughts on it?
I actually like it a lot. It makes a nice little adventure. Interesting adjustments on powering them up and lowering them back down. I do like it a lot.
I think that it follows the suit of something that I very frequently do is because we have a group that is like 6 out of 7 dungeon masters,
Yep.
we'll say. Because we
That's
have
in the main group.
Yep, because we have like 6 out of 7 dungeon masters. For me, it makes sense not to just run things as their base stat block. For me, everything can be special. It doesn't take a lot to say that this creature now has access to this, right? Additionally, let's say introducing magic items from players, it doesn't take a lot to introduce a magic item by instead giving it to another NPC that's going to use it on the players. So, for example, maybe
The bag of rats.
the bag of rats, or maybe the explosive ale is its own like makeshift alchemy fire.
I can now see my brother with the bag of rats.
Exactly, right?
He had that army of chipmunks and army of crabs. Now
Yup.
he has a bag of rats.
Um, you know, I think it'd be an interesting idea. Following this same idea of me building the encounter, how would you change my encounter?
How would I change your encounter?
Yeah.
Yes.
What do you? Is there anything that you think I got wrong or that you'd do differently?
There's nothing wrong with that. We would have to like see the stat blocks specifically for each variant.
Yeah, I didn't make stat blocks.
Yeah, it's you just take your. You said the king was based off a boss and
Yeah.
some modifications there.
Yeah, so think like almost more similar to an ogre, if you will, swinging a cleaver and having a much more bulky health pool.
Yeah, I wouldn't change anything with it. It's pretty good in itself. You went like far beyond what I was thinking you were gonna do.
Thank you. I try.
I tried. I thought about all my little scenarios and I kept them all simple, like simple modifications.
That's okay. That's okay. I'm sure yours will have some interesting stuff. Don't feel like mine is outshining yours. So that's my goblin encounter. I thought it'd be really cool to have a Goblin King's Feast where it's like this rescue mission of my full group trying to go and get them. And there's a lot of different ways that it could go wrong. There's a lot of different ways that these goblins could go and fight back against them. That was my idea.
Yep. My thoughts, say like on my own little goblin encounter situation, is that I went and thought about some simple options. Oftentimes goblins are a little chaotic and not so organized, but some of the easy things one can do to create unique goblins is that you give them mundane items, say like caltrops.
Oh, I like that.
You can dress them up all in black if you want to go with ninja goblins, and you can have them say like rush in to steal something, and say like a small group of goblins coming through come into a marketplace. They see the thing they want, they drop down, they grab it, and they take off. But they throw caltrops as they go along,
Yeah.
which covers the little areas. We could say the marketplace is sufficiently large enough that they can only cover
A small
a
section.
small section of the path of the marketplace. So you have the option of deciding whether the players want to jump over the caltrops or run around them kind of situation.
Or if they even want to deal with the goblins, but the
Or
goblins are now stealing, so like they could
yeah,
earn some kind of.
causing chaos and stuff like that. You can give
So
them
the goblins have planned their own ninja or like theft heist, if you
Yes.
will, into the primary marketplace, and the players are now watching as like they're like making their way down from the rooftops on a rope or something,
Yeah.
stealing from the shopkeepers and then
taking off.
scatter.
Yeah, and then they throw caltrops, or they might say have a goblin toss a net on top of a guard or something to stop the guard.
Okay, all right, all right. I
Like
like
off
the
the roof, like one goblin just tosses off a net to stop people, and every so often a goblin will show up as the players are chasing and will toss a net off at them, so it turns into a action time event moment where, oh my goodness, there's this net coming down.
Where are they all coming from?
Make a dexterity save, or a dex save, or an acrobatics check, and
That's beautiful.
or dex check,
And
or anything
then
like-
goblin nets.
yeah, goblin nets on top.
Goblin nets everywhere and caltrops. So you went hard on to the traps and the. Okay, I like it.
Yeah, that's one little fun scenario you can do with goblins. It doesn't radically increase their CR.
Mine
You're,
did.
you're just yours did. But my point was with mine is that I'm going to minimally upgrade them in various things. I just
By
gave them-
giving them nets.
yeah, I gave them nets and caltrops.
Okay.
And you set up a scenario where the players have to chase them. They might cast some spells, knock out some of the goblins, like cast sleep on them.
Yeah.
In which case, if the players cast sleep on the goblins, there might be some nets flying in at the players at that moment.
Yeah.
And as they try to get up to the goblins that are laying on the ground,
Okay.
they might continue to chase some of the goblins because some of the goblins might still take off because some of their buddies they're chaotic.
Yeah,
They're in the chaotic neutral or chaotic evil. If you
I
want to play that.
I built mine entirely around chaos as well. Absolutely.
Yeah. So they might just leave their buddies behind because
Every goblin for themselves, if you will.
because the tasty substance or the rare item is so important to them that they just have to get away with it. So you have to choose between stopping and arresting the goblins or taking off after the ones that are still running. Which case you might have situations similar to your goblin brewmasters, where you have like goblins who take tiles off of roofs
Yep.
and throw them down,
Yep.
known as a 1d8 a bludgeoning damage thrown
Or
object.
this giant barn that has all these wooden logs along the side. Maybe they got some loose ones that are chucking big old logs down.
Oh, they cause a little chaos and cause like a part of a building to fall off
Yup.
at the players and stuff like that. And you gotta ask yourself, what is this item? It could be something incredibly stupid, like some really tasty muffins with the tastiest fillings ever.
Yup.
And they're just simply trying to steal them because they are addicted to this tasty food.
Oh my god, blueberries.
Blueberries. Or you could go with something like some rare MacGuffin that they were hired to steal.
Green berries.
Yeah, green gooseberries or
There you go.
honeyberries or something like or
For their goblin shaman.
or the talisman of Gublagop
Exactly.
or something like that. Or a rare scepter or something like that.
I feel like you're calling out all of my MacGuffins in my Everend campaign
Yeah.
that you had to get from across my continent.
Yes, but anyways, you could. That's basically just a scenario of just generic goblins. You give them extra items, and you set up little traps in the environment that they trigger to launch at the players. And they're not substantially more powerful than regular goblins.
Mine are.
They're just using little traps. But fun things for goblins is that you could take the energy or the feel that goblins have a touch of that rogue in them.
Yep.
And you might just choose to say, oh, I'm going to give them dash as a bonus action.
Yup.
So they can
You
dash.
can absolutely do that, yeah.
Or I'm going to give them a touch of sneak attack, or give them a bonus action hide feature, or something like that. And it's probably not going to substantially upgrade their CR by just giving them
That additional
that
ability or utility.
extra utility ability, or that tiny bit of extra damage. Like you stick a touch of a D4 of poison on their daggers or their darts or their arrows or something like that.
Personally, mind you, it does up their difficulty. I think that it's much more fun to give conditions onto their arrows or daggers and whatnot. The poison condition is so much more fun than poison damage.
Yeah, I do agree. If you just have something like a touch of fire damage or a touch of poison damage or something onto that like that, it doesn't substantially increase. It's if you're as long as you're playing with a single D4,
Yeah.
it's no big deal to tack that on. Once you start getting into the D6s, D8s, D10s at early levels, well, you're now getting to a territory of actually modifying their CR.
I tend to
And then if you start tacking on conditions like
poison,
paralysis, or
stunned.
say like if you do add say like fire, you might actually have you homebrew a ignited
yeah,
feature.
another burning each turn and they got to put it out.
Yeah, now the characters are on fire, they had to put it out, so you go from there. Small stuff to just crank up the goblins a little bit.
For me, it's not even that you're necessarily updating their difficulty. I just think that for a lot of players, they're just like, oh, I took 2 damage. But it's so much more different. They're like, oh, I'm poisoned. I got to worry about this now.
Yeah.
It's different, right?
The condition, adding on the condition or replacing the regular effect with a condition would actually be more substantial, yes.
Yes. Mind you, you don't. It's goblins. You don't need to make the save super high.
Yeah, and you could also just go with the whole chaos thing.
You could also do
the chaos fire thing, where they might be carrying explosives on them, and they might explode if you hit them hard with certain attacks.
You could also do the route of if they succeed, they're just taking the D4 of damage. If they fail, they're taking the poison condition.
That's also a very good option in itself.
I really like that, actually.
So what I have with my alley scenario with the various modifications of goblins is probably that easily is like probably a level 2 to level 4 range for a party of 5, 8 to 6.
Mine's probably in the range of level 3.
Yeah, yours is. The way you described it makes it feel like if you have like a party of 4 people. Keep in mind that people sometimes our groups. Literally, the smallest of our groups is typically right around that 6 people in the group.
Yes.
And our largest is like 7 to 8 people.
Yes.
So whenever adjusting CR, the easiest thing is to count actions and how many dice is of damage it would be to knock out a player character.
Yeah.
In a round.
Quite literally, yeah.
So we had a fun little scenario with that tonight as well, where we talked about that with one of our experienced game masters about the difficulty of adjusting a dragon to deal with a group that sits magically between the 2 CR levels of it.
Yep.
So
that between adult and ancient.
Yeah. So there's that. Some of the safest ways to upgrade CR I've already covered. You can go with John's option of exploding barrels, vomit attacks, environment effects.
Or you can just tack on AC health.
Yeah.
I find that tacking up AC kind of sucks for players, and tacking up health is good to an extent until it's not.
I absolutely agree on the health part. Please note that every dungeon master may agree or disagree with various things. Some groups have different levels of tolerance towards certain things. If combat goes too long with some groups, they may feel that it's a slog, while other groups are perfectly fine with having really long combats, and they're still entirely engaged with it. But yeah, I personally feel that instead of modifying up health and AC, which I've done a lot in the past.
I still generally a
Yeah.
lot of the times with our group I'll double the hit points.
Yeah. I do agree that increasing AC is something that you are probably going to do at various times, but I found that solely focusing on AC and health increases over damage usually turns the fight into more of a slog situation.
Agreed.
Uh, when it comes to modifying monsters, adding on some kind of other effect, like as John suggested, like paralysis or
Exhaustion. Ooh, chuck
blindness. You know,
exhaustion
like
in there.
yeah, like, you know, you can another thing you could do with goblins. Not a big thing is you could have a pocket sand attack. You can Dale Gribble just pops up on the screen.
Yeah. Bam.
Right in the eyes is uh that is actually a pretty good one in itself, and you can have either the players do a dexterity save on that or a constitution save. Either or works perfectly fine.
Completely agreed.
I would say probably a dex save on the initial, and if they have sand in their eyes, is a constitution save.
To get it out of there.
Yeah, or
Once they've got past that check, they've gotten their eyes cleared, and then
Yeah.
they're good.
but
Otherwise, they have disadvantage because they got like blinded.
yeah. If you add that feature to a goblin, probably say like only have do it each once. Like they only have like a pocket of sand and just for the situation. And that probably would only
Or make it so there's one goblin, that's the pocket sand goblin.
that's well,
that
that's,
one loves to throw pocket
yeah,
sand.
that's also an option too. And if you want to be really the best, one of the funnest things you can do as a dungeon master is learn how to subtly tip off players to something.
Yup. Yes.
So and be also a nod or to a reference or something like that.
Dale Gribble.
You can have that goblin wear a orange hat and
Yep.
and silver glass reflective glasses
Yep.
in the fight. And you can make it so that that goblin uses all poison attacks with his melee weapons, and he also does a pocket sand attack like as his escape option.
Or just whenever.
Or just whenever. That's Dale Gribble likes to escape a lot.
Yes.
But anyways, he can use that as a addendum onto his disengage.
Yep.
And oftentimes I've seen so many times, even in our groups, even with the really experienced dungeon masters, they will simply say the monster has disengaged, or when they're playing a character, I'm disengaging.
Where it can be more interesting to add an additional effect onto that.
I'm going to go ahead and toss some pocket sand in those guys. I'm disengaging from this combat.
Yup.
You give the person like an explanation, and then you basically clarify what you're actually doing by the mechanic.
I appreciate
And
it. I enjoy it.
And if you do that enough times with that character, you don't even have to clarify that you're doing a specific mechanic. You just say you toss pocket sand in them, and I run away, and the dungeon master will most likely, by then after you've told them that that's tied into your disengage, is going to just leave it to you at that.
Yeah. Yep.
So there you go.
Is that goblins?
There's more to goblins. You can pull one of your other things you did, and your empowered goblins.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And I love that one. Actually, that's really neat. And we actually homebrewed extra features onto that concept in alt versions.
I have a tendency to add in additional special effects. For example, in my last campaign, there was let's say some kind of magic to the world that you could imbue this weave of the magic into other creatures. They could be born with it or whatnot, right? So, for example, this could be not just a boar; it could be a fiery boar, right? Or same thing, a fiery mammoth that runs around its tusks light ablaze as it goes to swing into people, or this. You could do different plagued creatures or lightning effects, so on and so forth. I have a habit, and I really enjoy adding in those special things, and it can be more than just when this thing attacks, it does a d6 of fire damage, which you could chuck it on there, or let's say it normally would do 2d6s of damage, make it a d6 of bludgeoning and a d6 of fire. So you're not even changing the difficulty there. You're realistically just changing the flavor, right? So you can make things interesting in that format, or you can even add in the additional effects. For example, when it dashes, maybe when it dashes, it leaves a trail of fire that when people walk through, it's going to hurt them, right? Maybe a d6 of fire damage for walking through it, so on and so forth, right?
Or if it runs past, it has little lightning bolts that come off it that shock people, and causes people to lose their reactions for that turn, or something like
Yup.
that.
Exactly, like a d4 damage plus lose reaction or something. Yeah. So I have a general joy.
How did you describe the look of your goblins when you did this?
I want to say that there was the scars on their body, almost similar to like if you got struck by lightning. There's different tears and scars on them, and they glow in a certain color when there's just like a low hum glow that's generally present. But when they're really getting fixated and angry or hyped up, then they start to surge with that energy. They can even then start empowering their weapon, right?
So, and as if I remember correctly, one thing you said, and when we ran into one such goblin, is that you noticed that there is this like warmth of glow from them, and as you said before, there's these scars that trail up their arms, and it seems to glow a crimson color for it. And as the goblin sees you, these scars light up with a ripple of fire going through their body. And as the players fight them, the goblin gets agitated. The swords ignite on fire. They strike you with extra fire damage.
Maybe the fire damage starts going up the angrier they get.
And then there's like I think sometimes you actually had them like explode with an effect of fire. Or when they die. Or literally light themselves on fire and burn to the ground.
Yeah, you could even have poisoned goblins, if you will, and ones that are more, let's say, the gluttonous, really big ones, and those just really do just explode in this gory explosion of visceral grossness that then covers everything and everyone.
That's a Constitution saving throw, right?
Poison damage, con save, all of that. And if you're making touch with them, maybe we could use diseases as a mechanic. Oh my god, diseases could exist.
Yeah. You got rot gut.
You got rot gut. Well, there's my flavor to more than just goblins. I like chucking that onto a lot of things.
Yeah, it's one of those universal templates. And anything you like a small extra effect you attach to a creature, such as goblins, you can apply to kobolds or anything else that will beef up their little CR rating, or just add extra flavor to them.
Besides just making them bigger.
Besides making them bigger or stronger, you don't have to just pump up their damage or give them bigger weapons or give them magical weapons.
But you also can.
The nice feature of basically infusing them with magical energy or a condition is that when they have that fire imbuement or lightning,
your
or
players
ice,
can't loot it afterwards.
and they can't loot it at all afterwards. It's a fun way of controlling the power scale. And it's also a learning situation because when a player first sees a creature, in that campaign there was a lot of focus on the fire effect. And that I don't think there was any other variation really. Yeah, maybe like
there was some poison and there was some plague.
Plague.
There was
and cold.
There was cold. I think I had like 5 different ones. There was also there was the necrotic as well.
Yeah. The fire one was the most that stuck out because it actually was like the intro to the adventure, and it was consistently used through because for whatever crazy reason we had a druid in the party that could talk to animals, and he talked to the Ember Tusk and befriended the giant woolly mammoth that was empowered with fire.
And
And made him befriend us. and then we used Ember Tusk against the guy that hired us originally against us. And we got gifts from Ember Tusk, so we actually gained a bit of that fire empowerment. So that's another thing that could be done in that. So I think we will be doing a video on like that kind of gift system.
That
so
is a really
consider
fun.
consider that as a bonus on the back end of the Goblin video.
Okay, we're calling it at the end of the Goblin video.
Yeah.
Deal. Okay, Goblins, really cool. You can do a lot of cool things with them.
Oh yeah. The funnest thing with goblins have a good variety, as well as many other monsters at low CR. And oftentimes many campaigns will start in this range. So homebrewing special flavors to keep the party or the players excited many campaigns into the future.
Especially if you have a group of like all DMs who have ran their own goblins many times before, it can make a fun change of pace.
It's also a good way to counter our metagamers.
Oh, that's a big reason of why I do it, is because I've got a group of DMs. Everyone knows what things are, and when I run things, nobody knows what those are.
Oh yeah. In fact, the worst metagamer in our group is not even a dungeon master. I think he's the solo. He's the solo one.
The sole one that's not a dungeon master is the worst metagamer of them all.
Yeah, so.
Oh. All right. That's it for the Goblin video. Thank you for joining us. There was a little bit of tangents, but not a lot this time.
Yeah, there's a lot of extra bonus content in that one.
Yeah. I think it all stays in one. Thank you for being here. That's the Goblin video. We'll see you next time.